of the Higher Education Act of 1965, calling it, quote, the best path that remains to provide as many borrowers as possible with debt relief. Student loan payments do resume here in the coming months, and the White House says it's creating an on-ramp to repayment and implementing ways to ease borrowers' threat of default if they do fall behind over the next year. I want to talk about all of this, so let's bring in Peter C. Earle, an economist at the American Institute for Economic Research, to talk more about it. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Thanks for having me.
So first off, it sounds like that Supreme Court decision, based on speaking with economists, legal experts, just about everyone, that this was the outcome that was expected. Is that correct?
Yeah, this was expected, and there's really two issues here. The first has to do with a combination of overreach on the part of the executive branch and the willful abandonment of the delegated powers of Congress. The power of the purse belongs to Congress, and that revenue bills have to start in the House of Representatives, be approved by Senate, and then find their way to the president. That's the first issue. The second is that the issue of student loans is being forgiven by executive fiat. And so the Supreme Court's decision is a great one on both accounts.
So do you think any other plans that Biden does come up with might also face challenges from the court? Because we do know that he's discussed the possibility of some other alternatives, some other plans here. But are those likely to face kind of the similar situations when you are talking about the current Supreme Court justices?
So to the extent that any of them involve taking action without Congress, I would say that they probably would. The issue of whether it's moral or right or economically beneficial or detrimental to forgive student loan debt is another one entirely. So that will be taken up eventually in any case. But whether or not it's challenged has to do with whether or not it flies in the face of the Constitution. And this plan actually did.
And it sounds like there could be effects, speaking economically, whether student loans are forgiven altogether or if they're not. Explain to me what some of those are.
Yeah, so the originally arguments about student debt relief had to do with the idea that everyone getting a college degree, regardless of the marketability of that degree, was a good idea. Clearly it wasn't. And then it came to be about pandemic relief. And with the moratorium on payments about to end, I think it's actually a matter of political survival for the Biden administration. We still have inflation at 4%, which is twice what it was just a few years ago. And the prices of shelter, food, and energy prices are in some cases still rising. So in a month or two, when the student loan payments kick in again, when the moratorium ends, consumption is probably going to take a major hit. GDP has already been growing at about 1.5% since last summer's recession. And with millions of disposable income disappearing because of the debt having to be paid again, the moratorium ending could be devastating for the U.S. economy. Consumption could dry up to almost nothing. But there's also consequences to forgiving that debt as well.
And one thing I wanted to bring up here is that yesterday we were watching some of the protests that were taking place after that decision did come down from the Supreme Court. And a lot of people were essentially saying Biden needs to do this, he needs to do this, but it's not necessarily completely up to him as what does happen here. Is that correct?
Sure. I mean, as I said, Congress has something to do with it, and also I think that the different universities as well will play some role in the accrediting agencies. I mean, the whole schooling system, the education system in America is very complicated. There's a lot of interest at stake. There are a lot of interests that compete, and so it's going to have to take a number of things lining up to get this to happen, if it is to happen, to get student debt relief and forgiveness in place.
And one thing a lot of people don't realize, I guess, is that we're talking millions upon millions of people that do have student loans, not necessarily people who are just out of college, but you also have older Americans who also have those student loans that they have yet to fully repay.
Yeah, something like 43 million Americans have some form of student loan debt. And so, I mean, if you consider that the average amount of debt right now is about $37,000 and the average interest rate on that debt is 6%, that means the average borrower has to pay something like $420, $415 a month. It adds up.
Yeah, it definitely does, for sure. Is there anything else that can actually be done to help people with student loan debt? Will anything be done? What is the next step in all of this?
Well, I mean, first of all, any American who thinks that forgiving student loan, is necessary is more than welcome to pay some student of their choice's debt. It doesn't have to fall on the taxpayers. But I mean, this is the kind of thing where we're facing the consequences of years of sort of passing the buck and encouraging kids to go to school and pursue degrees for which there's very little marketability afterwards. So I think this is sort of forcing a reckoning that's a long time coming, and pushing it on the taxpayers is a bad idea in any case. That's my opinion.
All right. Peter C. Earle with the American Institute for Economic Research. Thank you so much for joining us here to provide some of that info. Is there anything else that you want to add here before I let you go?
I mean, just that, the benefits of higher education, they generally fall almost entirely upon the individual. So, I mean, it seems only right that costs should as well.
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. We appreciate it.
Great to be here.